No human had ever been invited beyond the inner gate of the Zytherian Empire. The gate was not just a door, it was a symbol of absolute power, guarded by creatures older than most stars. Yet on this silent cycle, it opened for one man. Ethan Cole stood alone on the black crystal platform, his hands calm at his sides, even as his heart beat like a warning drum. He was not a soldier, not a diplomat, and not a hero. He was a human CEO, and the most dangerous place in the galaxy had called his name. The palace stretched endlessly before him, carved from living metal that shifted like it was breathing. Soft blue lights ran along the walls, reacting to his presence with faint pulses, as if the structure itself was studying him. Alien guards lined the path, tall and motionless, their armor sharp and ceremonial. Their eyes followed Ethan with clear distrust. To them, humans were clever traitors and stubborn survivors, nothing more. No human had ever been considered worthy of standing here, and yet Ethan had been summoned personally by the alien queen herself. As he walked forward, Ethan forced his thoughts into order. The summons had arrived without explanation, sealed with imperial authority. Refusing it was not an option. The Zytherian Empire controlled half the known galaxy, and their queen was said to be eternal. Rumors claimed she had ruled for thousands of cycles, watching stars rise and collapse like brief sparks in the dark. If she wished to see a human, it meant something was very wrong. The throne chamber opened before him, vast and unsettlingly quiet. The air felt heavy, as if time moved slower inside this space. At the far end, the queen rested upon her throne, a towering figure wrapped in flowing bioorganic armor. Her crown glowed faintly, no longer with power, but with strain. Even from a distance, Ethan could see it. The queen was not well. Her once commanding presence felt weakened, like a dying sun struggling to hold its light. Ethan stopped at the marked distance and waited. No one spoke. No announcement was made. The silence stretched, thick and deliberate. This was not a test of fear, he realized. It was a test of patience. Ethan passed it by standing still, his expression controlled, his mind alert. He had built his life navigating pressure, reading rooms where a single mistake could destroy empires of money and influence. This room was no different, only far more deadly. Finally, the queen moved. The sound of her voice echoed through the chamber, layered and ancient, carrying the weight of command and exhaustion at once. She spoke his name perfectly, without hesitation, without accent. "Ethan Cole," she said. "You stand where no human ever has." The words were not a warning. They were an observation. Ethan inclined his head slightly, not in submission, but in respect. "I go where I am invited," he replied calmly. A few guards shifted at his tone. Humans were not supposed to sound confident here. The queen studied him closely. Her eyes, deep and luminous, seemed to look through flesh and bone, into intent itself. "Your kind believes this summons is an honor," she said. "It is not." The chamber lights dimmed slightly. "It is a consequence." Ethan's calm cracked, just enough for concern to surface. "A consequence of what?" he asked. The queen's grip tightened on the arm of her throne. For the first time, something close to pain crossed her expression. "Of survival," she answered. "And of failure." A low murmur spread among the attendants, quickly silenced by a single glance from their ruler. She rose slowly from her throne, each movement measured, controlled, and clearly costly. The legendary queen, feared across systems, took a step forward. Then another. When she reached the edge of the platform, something unthinkable happened. She lowered herself. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the alien queen knelt before a human. Ethan's breath caught, not in triumph, but in shock. Every instinct told him this moment would change everything. This was not a request. This was a turning point. The queen looked up at him, her voice now quieter, stripped of ceremony and threat. "My empire is dying," she said. "My people have chosen ruin. And I have chosen you." Before Ethan could respond, the chamber alarm screamed to life, red light flooding the hall. The guards turned outward, weapons rising. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, something had gone terribly wrong. Ethan understood one truth with chilling clarity. Whatever the Queen was about to ask of him, the galaxy would never be the same again. The chamber remained locked in chaos even after the alarms faded into a low, distant echo, and Ethan Coles stood frozen where the alien queen had knelt before him. The image refused to leave his mind. The ruler of half the galaxy lowered before a human was not just impossible, it was dangerous. The guards slowly lowered their weapons, yet none of them relaxed. Their eyes carried fear not of Ethan but of what her choice represented, a shift that could break the order of the stars. The Queen rose with effort, her movements slower now, stripped of illusion. Ethan could see the truth clearly. She was failing, not politically, not strategically, physically. The immortal ruler was reaching an end she had never planned for, and that end had arrived faster than expected. The throne behind her pulsed weakly, responding to her presence like a dying heart. She did not return to it. Instead, she remained standing before Ethan as if distance no longer mattered. "You wonder why a human stands here," she said, her voice softer but heavier than before. "Because my kind no longer understands legacy. To them, power is ownership, control, domination, but power was never meant to be held forever, it was meant to be carried forward." Ethan felt the weight of her words settle into him like gravity. He had negotiated hostile takeovers and survived corporate wars, yet this was different. This was history pressing down on one moment. She gestured, and the air between them shimmered. A projection unfolded, revealing a vast empire of stars, fleets, cities, and worlds burning slowly from within. Betrayal fractured her people. Noble houses turned against one another, chasing her throne rather than preserving what she built. The Queen had ruled too long, and in that time her own image had become more important to them than the future. They did not want to save the empire, they wanted to inherit it. Ethan listened carefully, his mind searching for strategy and exit at the same time. "You have allies," he said carefully. "Empires do not fall alone." The Queen looked at him, then truly looked, and for the first time he understood why she had chosen him. "Allies believe in continuation," she replied. "My people believe in entitlement. They see the legacy as a prize, not a responsibility. That is why it must leave them." The words struck deeper than any threat. Ethan felt the air grow colder as realization formed. "You are asking me to carry something that will make me a target, not just me," he added quietly. "My entire species." The Queen did not deny it. That honesty carried its own danger. "Yes," she said without hesitation, "the moment you leave this chamber, every power in the galaxy will see humanity differently. Some will fear you, some will try to destroy you, others will try to use you. That is the cost of relevance." Ethan stepped back instinctively. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing with invisible pressure. Humans had fought for centuries to be left alone, to survive on the edge of larger powers, and now that fragile anonymity was being offered up in exchange for something he did not yet fully understand. "You do not know us," he said firmly. "We fight each other, we destroy our own worlds. We are not better than your people." The Queen nodded slowly. "That is precisely why you are different. You fail and adapt. You break and rebuild. You do not cling to perfection. Humanity survives not because it is pure, but because it learns." She turned and with a slow, controlled motion revealed the core embedded within her throne, a living structure of light and motion pulsing with intelligence older than recorded time. "This," she said, "is the legacy, not a crown, not a title, knowledge, memory, authority, and restraint. It will not obey someone who seeks power for itself. It must be chosen, and choosing it will change you forever." Ethan felt his pulse quicken, his instincts screamed refusal. This was not his war, not his burden. "I cannot accept this," he said finally. "My world is not ready." The Queen approached until they stood face to face. Her presence no longer felt overwhelming, only heavy with truth. "Earth will never be ready," she said, "but it will survive because humans do not wait for permission to adapt." She lowered her voice to a whisper meant only for him. "I did not choose you because you are strong. I chose you because when power terrifies you, that is when it becomes safe." The chamber lights dimmed again as distant tremors shook the palace. Something was coming, and time was closing, and Ethan realized there would be no delay, no negotiation. The legacy was already moving toward him, whether he accepted it or not. And somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy was beginning to notice that a human had been seen standing where an empire was about to fall. Ethan Coles stood at the center of the throne chamber while the palace trembled beneath his feet, and for the first time in his life there was no contract to review, no board to convince, and no safe outcome to calculate. The choice before him could not be delayed, delegated, or denied. It was raw, irreversible, and vast enough to swallow worlds. The alien queen waited in silence, watching him not as a ruler but as someone placing the future into another's hands. The legacy pulsed behind her, a living presence that felt aware of him. Ethan did not need to touch it to feel its weight. It pressed against his thoughts, stirring instincts he did not recognize. Images flickered at the edge of his mind, stars folding into strategy, fleets moving like chess pieces, civilizations rising and collapsing in repeating cycles. Humanity had always believed it was alone in its struggles, but now Ethan saw survival as a shared language spoken across species and time. He thought of Earth not as a symbol, but as a fragile living world filled with people who would never know his name, children laughing in crowded cities, workers chasing futures, families hoping tomorrow would be kinder than yesterday. They were imperfect, divided, and stubborn, but they endured against climate, against war, against their own mistakes. They endured because they had no other choice, and suddenly Ethan understood why the Queen had looked beyond her own kind. "I cannot rule an empire," he said at last, his voice steady despite the storm around them. "I am not a king." The Queen inclined her head slightly. "Then you will succeed where kings failed," she replied. "This legacy does not need a throne, it needs judgment. You will not command my people, you will outgrow them." The words carried no pride, only finality. The empire she had built was already a memory. She was not saving it, she was transforming it. The tremors grew stronger, cracks of light spread along the walls as distant explosions echoed through the structure. The rebels were no longer hiding. The Queen extended one elongated hand toward the core. When she touched it, the chamber filled with a deep, resonant hum. The legacy responded, as if awakening from a long sleep. Ethan felt it turn toward him, and in that moment fear struck him fully. If he accepted this, there would be no return to anonymity, no quiet victory, no safe Earth hidden in the shadows of larger powers. Ethan took a single step forward, then stopped. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly, grounding himself the way he had before hostile negotiations when millions of lives depended on his decisions. He did not think of glory or dominance, he thought of responsibility. If the galaxy was collapsing into greed and betrayal, then someone had to stand between power and destruction. If that someone had to be human, then humanity would rise or fall by that truth. "I will carry it," he said, opening his eyes, but not as a ruler, not as an emperor. The Queen watched him closely. "What will you be then?" she asked. "A guardian." Ethan replied simply, "Someone who knows when to use power and when to refuse it." The legacy surged brighter, reacting to his words. The Queen allowed herself a faint expression that might once have been a smile. The transfer began without ceremony. Light flowed from the core toward Ethan, wrapping around him, not violently, but deliberately, as if testing him. His mind opened unwillingly to the flood. Memories not his own poured in, ancient wars lost to arrogance, alliances broken by fear, victories achieved through patience, not force. He felt the weight of mistakes that had destroyed civilizations, and the quiet strength of choices that had saved them. Humanity's history suddenly felt young but not insignificant. It was still being written. Ethan fell to one knee, not in pain but in strain. The legacy was vast, and it demanded balance. His thoughts sharpened, reorganized, strengthened. He felt no hunger for control, only clarity. The Queen staggered as the last of the light left the core. Guards rushed toward her, but she raised a hand, stopping them. Her eyes never left Ethan. "You are not becoming us," she said. "You are becoming something new." The chamber doors shattered inward as armed rebels stormed the hall, weapons glowing with lethal intent. The moment froze in tension. The Queen stood exposed, weakened, and unarmed. Ethan rose slowly to his feet and turned to face the threat. The legacy moved within him, aligning thought and instinct. He did not feel rage, he felt resolve. In that instant, the galaxy crossed a threshold it would never understand until it was too late. A human had accepted a burden older than empires, and the consequences were already in motion. Humanity was no longer watching history from the sidelines, it had stepped into the center of it, and the stars would soon respond. The first rebel shot tore through the air where the alien Queen had been standing moments before, and the sound echoed like the beginning of an ending. Ethan reacted without thinking. His body moved, guided by instinct, sharpened by the legacy pulling him forward and to the side as the energy blast scorched the floor behind him. Guards surged to form a shield around their Queen, but it was already clear this attack had been planned for a long time. Every angle, every timing, every weakness had been studied by those who once swore loyalty. The rebels flooded the chamber in disciplined waves, their armor marked with the sigils of noble houses that had ruled entire systems under the Queen's authority. These were not desperate traitors, they were confident executioners who believed the empire was already theirs. Ethan could feel their intent through the legacy, not hatred but entitlement. They believed history owed them power, and that belief made them dangerous. The Queen staggered as another tremor rocked the palace. She was fading fast, her life bound to the legacy she had just surrendered. Ethan moved toward her despite the chaos. The knowledge within him mapped the chamber, instantly revealing paths of escape, choke points, and structural weaknesses. He saw the palace not as art, but as a fortress, and every fortress had flaws. They will not stop, she said, her voice strained but calm. They cannot allow the legacy to leave them. Ethan knelt beside her, lowering his voice. You need to get out. He met her gaze, steady and unafraid. I will draw them away. A human sacrificing himself for an alien empire would have sounded absurd hours earlier. Now it felt inevitable. The Queen shook her head weakly. You still think like a man protecting a single world, she said softly. You must think like someone protecting many. The guards fell one by one, buying seconds with their lives. Ethan felt each loss like a distant echo. The legacy did not dull empathy, it sharpened it, making every death matter. He reached out not with a weapon but with command systems buried in the palace architecture. His thoughts aligned with ancient controls, and the floor shifted violently, throwing rebels off balance. Walls folded inward, sealing corridors and splitting enemy forces apart. Confusion rippled through their ranks as something older then their rebellion reasserted itself. The Queen gasped sharply as a blast struck her side, her armor fractured, light leaking from the wound like starlight bleeding into darkness. Ethan caught her before she fell, and in that moment the weight of her age pressed into him. She was not just a ruler, she was a witness to centuries, and that witness was ending. Hold on, he said, though he knew she could not. She reached up, gripping his arm with surprising strength. This was always how it would end, she whispered, not in peace but in transition. Ethan lifted her carefully and followed the path. The legacy revealed a hidden passage beneath the throne, sealed since the Empire's founding. The rebels shouted in fury as the floor closed behind them, trapping their prize out of reach. The passage was narrow and dark, vibrating as distant explosions shook the palace above. They moved slowly, the Queen growing heavier with each step, not in mass but in finality. At the end of the passage, a chamber opened to the stars. A single escape vessel waited, ancient but functional, designed for one purpose only, the preservation of the legacy. The Queen knew she would not leave it. Ethan knew it too. When they stopped, she straightened with effort and placed her hand against his chest where the legacy now rested. You carry more than knowledge, she said. You carry my failures. Learn from them. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Do not become what we were. Ethan shook his head, struggling against the truth. No, he said, you should come. You can still guide us. The Queen smiled faintly, a gesture filled with sadness and relief. My guidance ended the moment I chose you, she replied. This future needs distance from my shadow. Alarms screamed closer now, the rebels tearing through barriers with brutal persistence. The time was gone. She pushed him toward the vessel, and before he could resist, she activated the launch sequence. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time the legendary Queen looked at peace. Promise me, she said, not domination, not revenge, only balance. Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded. I promise. The hatch sealed, and the vessel launched violently into the void as the chamber behind it erupted in fire. Through the viewport, Ethan saw the palace collapse inward, light and debris spiraling like a dying star. Somewhere within that destruction the Queen fell, and with her an age ended. Ethan stood alone in silence, carrying a legacy born of betrayal and sacrifice, knowing with absolute certainty that the galaxy would soon come hunting for what now lived inside a human heart. The stars stretched and twisted as the escape vessel tore its way through hyperspace, carrying Ethan Cole away from the ruins of an empire and toward a future no human had ever faced. Alone in the narrow chamber, he finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The alien Queen was gone, the Zytherian Empire was collapsing, and inside him lived a legacy powerful enough to reshape the balance of the galaxy. The moment the vessel exited hyperspace near the edge of human-controlled space, Ethan felt it. The legacy reacted like a warning signal rippling through his thoughts. Alien sensors long hidden across the stars were waking up. Messages were being sent, councils were being summoned, and war planners were already marking Earth as a potential target. Humanity had crossed an invisible line, and the galaxy noticed immediately. Ethan did not go to Earth at once. Instead, he vanished. Officially, his ship was lost. Unofficially, he used the legacy to hide himself in the blind spots between systems, watching and learning. The knowledge within him unfolded slowly, revealing technologies that could uplift humanity or destroy it if misused. He resisted the urge to act too quickly, remembering the Queen's final warning: balance mattered more than power. From the shadows he watched alien reactions unfold. Empires that once ignored humanity now studied it with intense focus. Fleets shifted positions, trade routes were rerouted, and ancient treaties were quietly broken, all because a human now carried something that should not exist outside alien control. Humanity had not fired a single shot yet, it was already being labeled a threat. When Ethan finally returned to Earth, he did so in silence, no grand arrival, no public announcement. He stepped back into a world still arguing about borders, resources, and profit, unaware that the galaxy was preparing to decide its fate. Ethan moved carefully, contacting a small circle of leaders, scientists, and strategists. He trusted people who understood responsibility more than ambition. He told them the truth, not as a ruler, but as a warning. Fear spread quickly, but it did not become panic. Humanity had faced extinction before in different forms and survived through cooperation when it mattered most. Laboratories were secured, defenses quietly upgraded, and communication networks hardened. Using the legacy, Ethan accelerated progress without revealing its source, guiding human innovation rather than replacing it. Alien principles blended with human creativity, producing systems no one else could predict. Beyond Earth, the first alien probes entered the solar system disguised as explorers and traders. Ethan saw through them instantly. They were scouts measuring reaction time, technological growth, and psychological readiness. Humanity responded with restraint, neither hostile nor submissive. That uncertainty unsettled the Watchers. More probes followed, then small fleets positioned just beyond detection range. The message was clear: the galaxy was deciding whether Earth was worth eliminating. Ethan stood in an underground command center watching the data streams flow. His role was not to command armies but to shape outcomes. He anticipated enemy logic and countered it, not with force but misdirection. Systems appeared stronger than they were, weaknesses were hidden, and strategic ambiguity became Earth's greatest shield. Humanity was learning the art of survival on a galactic scale. Then the signal arrived, not an attack, not a demand, a declaration broadcast across multiple systems. Humanity is in possession of restricted legacy technology. Surrender the carrier, and your world will be spared. Ethan read the message without emotion. He had known this moment would come. The galaxy did not fear humanity itself, it feared what humanity might become if allowed to grow. He drafted the response himself, concise and unmistakable: Earth will not surrender one of its own. We seek no empire, only coexistence. The reply sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels. For the first time, a minor species had refused, not out of ignorance but confidence. That refusal transformed perception overnight. Humanity was no longer a background civilization, it was a variable. Alien fleets began to move closer, their formations visible to long-range sensors. Panic threatened to rise, but Ethan addressed the leaders calmly. He explained the strategy, not of resistance but of deterrence. Show them humanity could defend itself without becoming what they feared. Preparations accelerated, orbital defenses synchronized, and communication arrays projected controlled strength rather than aggression. As the fleets crossed the outer boundary of the solar system, Ethan felt the legacy stir. Fully alert and focused, humanity was no longer hiding, it was standing its ground. The galaxy had labeled humans a threat without understanding why. That misunderstanding would soon be corrected. For the first time since leaving the palace, Ethan allowed himself a single thought of grim clarity: the Queen had been right. Power terrified humanity, and that fear would keep it disciplined. As alien ships closed in around Earth, one truth became unavoidable: humanity had not sought this role, but it would not run from it. The era of being overlooked was over, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans did when survival was on the line. The first alien fleet crossed into the inner edge of the solar system with flawless precision, its formation wide and confident, designed to overwhelm through presence alone. Humanity watched in silence as massive shapes eclipsed distant stars. Panic spread across civilian networks, but within Earth's secured command structures there was only focus. Ethan Cole stood at the center of it, not in uniform, not on a throne, but behind layers of data and probability maps. His expression was calm because calm was necessary. Fear now would cost lives later. The legacy within him analyzed the fleet, instantly identifying doctrines, habits, and expectations built over centuries of unchecked dominance. These aliens had crushed lesser worlds without resistance, and expected the same here. They believed humanity would either submit or break. Either outcome worried them. That assumption was their weakness. Ethan did not order an immediate response. Instead, Earth went dark. Defense platforms powered down, communication signals dropped, and orbital traffic vanished. From the alien perspective, the planet appeared confused, disorganized, and afraid. The fleet slowed, commanders debating whether humans were preparing surrender or collapse. That hesitation created time, and time was the most valuable resource in war. Without warning, a wave of decoy signals erupted across the system. False energy spikes mimicked weapons activations, drawing alien attention away from real positions. Human drones, long dismissed as crude tech, flooded the space lanes, moving erratically yet with purpose. Each carried fragments of alien physics adapted creatively, pushing beyond what the invaders believed possible. Confusion spread through enemy ranks as their predictive models failed. Then humanity revealed its intent not through destruction but precision. A single alien escort vessel lost power and drifted harmlessly, its systems disabled by a targeted pulse designed to prove capability without provocation. The message was clear: humans could strike and chose restraint. That restraint unsettled the fleet commanders more than open hostility ever could. Ethan transmitted a short message across open channels: this system is defended. We will not pursue you. If you advance further, you will lose more than ships. The words carried no threat, only certainty. The legacy amplified his understanding of psychology. The alien commanders heard something unfamiliar, a species that knew its limits and refused to be baited into excess. The response was immediate. An aggressive, smaller attack craft surged forward, testing Earth's perimeter. Ethan anticipated it. Human defenses activated in layers, energy fields shifting dynamically, absorbing and redirecting force rather than resisting it outright. The attackers found themselves trapped in a web of moving variables, their weapons effective but inefficient, their losses mounted faster than expected. Across Earth, people watched in stunned silence as the first true interstellar battle unfolded around their world. Humanity was not winning through strength but intelligence. The legacy did not fight for them, it taught them how to think ahead, how to adapt mid-conflict, and how to value survival over victory. As the battle escalated, Ethan felt the full awakening of the legacy. It did not demand domination, it demanded balance. He used it to open a secure channel directly to the alien command ship, bypassing encryption centuries ahead of human technology. He spoke calmly: you came here believing we would kneel or shatter. You were wrong. We do not seek your fall, we seek our future. Inside the alien fleet, disagreement erupted. Some leaders argued for total annihilation, others warned of unacceptable losses against a species that learned this fast, prolonged war was a risk they could not measure. The realization spread quietly: humanity was not just defending itself, it was evolving in real time. A massive energy surge built at the heart of the alien formation, a weapon capable of ending the conflict instantly by destroying Earth. Ethan sensed it through the legacy before human sensors registered the threat. He reacted instantly, redirecting power across global defense networks and launching a countermeasure not designed to destroy but disrupt. The alien weapon collapsed in on itself, creating a shockwave that forced the fleet into retreat formation. Silence followed, broken only by the distant glow of withdrawing ships. Humanity had survived its first galactic confrontation not through overwhelming force but controlled resistance. The alien fleet retreated, carrying with it a new understanding: humans were not prey, they were unpredictable and disciplined, and that combination was dangerous. Ethan finally allowed himself to exhale. The cost had been real: ships damaged, lives lost, but Earth still stood. More importantly, humanity had sent a message without declaring war. As emergency teams worked across the planet, Ethan turned his gaze toward the stars, knowing this was only the beginning. The galaxy would respond not with immediate attack but with caution, debate, and fear. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage not as conquerors but as equals willing to defend themselves. That stance would change alliances, trigger negotiations, and reshape long-held assumptions. As Earth's defenses stabilized, one truth became undeniable: humanity had proven it belonged among the stars, and the legacy the Queen entrusted to a human had fulfilled its purpose for the first time. The galaxy did not respond to humanity's stand with immediate war. Instead, it responded with silence, a careful, deliberate silence that carried more weight than any threat. Fleets halted at their borders, councils paused long-standing campaigns, and ancient powers turned inward to reconsider assumptions that had guided them for centuries. Humanity had survived not by domination but by restraint, and that fact unsettled every empire that measured strength only in conquest. On Earth, the skies returned to calm, but nothing was the same. People looked upward with a new awareness, knowing they were no longer alone or ignored. Governments struggled to adapt to a reality where secrecy was no longer protection. Ethan Cole moved quietly through this new world, refusing titles offered to him by those who wanted certainty in leadership. He understood the danger of becoming a symbol. The Queen's failure had begun when her people confused permanence with authority. He would not repeat that mistake. Instead, Ethan focused on structure, not control. Using the legacy, he opened channels of communication across species, initiating dialogues that had never been attempted. Not demands, not ultimatums, but invitations. He proposed a shared framework for conflict resolution, trade, and mutual defense built on transparency and consequence. Many rejected it at first, viewing a human proposal as temporary or naive, but others listened, especially those who had watched their own empires decay under endless expansion. The legacy revealed patterns across history showing that civilizations did not fall from weakness but from imbalance. Too much power held too long always corrupted intention. Ethan used this understanding to shape a new approach, one that limited authority and forced accountability across systems. It was slow and perfect, and often resisted, but it took root because it offered something rare: stability without submission. Years passed, and the galaxy adjusted, borders softened, alliances shifted, and humanity's role evolved from anomaly to mediator. Earth did not become an empire, instead it became a meeting ground, a neutral world where species once hostile sat across from one another to negotiate rather than destroy. That position was not gifted, it was earned through consistency and refusal to abuse power. Ethan aged visibly while the legacy within him remained constant, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength was its impermanence. He prepared successors not to inherit the legacy but to understand it. Knowledge was shared, systems decentralized, and safeguards embedded to ensure no single individual could ever hold absolute control again. The Queen's sacrifice would not become another cycle of concentration and collapse. In his final years, Ethan stood on a quiet platform overlooking Earth's night side, watching city lights trace the curve of the planet. He felt the legacy stirring gently, no longer urgent, no longer heavy. It had found its place not within him, but within a network of trust across worlds. The burden he once carried alone now belonged to many, and that was how it was meant to be. When the legacy finally released him, it did so without ceremony, without pain. It dispersed into systems, protocols, and shared memory, becoming part of the galaxy rather than its ruler. Ethan smiled faintly as he felt its presence fade, knowing the Queen's final wish had been honored. Her people had failed because they clung to power. Humanity succeeded because it learned when to let go. The galaxy recorded the era not as the rise of humans but as the moment balance returned. The age of endless expansion gave way to one of cautious cooperation. Conflicts still occurred, mistakes were still made, but no single species stood above consequence. Again, humanity remained imperfect, divided, and endlessly curious, yet it had proven something vital: survival did not require supremacy, only responsibility.